Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, which is written by Jane Eyre. So, we see that Charlotte Bronte commonly was an English novelist and poet, and she was the eldest of the three Bronte sisters who survived into adulthood and whose novels became classics of English literature. While her first novel, The Professor, was rejected by publishers, and her second novel, that was Jane Eyre, and it was published in 1847, the sisters admitted to their Bell pseudonyms in 1848 and by the following year were celebrated in London's literary circles. So Charlotte Bronte was the last to die of all her siblings. Jane Eyre, it is written in first-person narration and it has been set in northern England in early 19th century. The main characters of the novel are Edward Rochester, Bertha Mason, St. John Rivers, Mr. Brocklehurst, and Jane Eyre. So basically, the story of Jane Eyre revolves around a young orphan girl. Jane Eyre is a young orphan girl and she lives with her aunt and her cousins, and she was tormented by her cousin and aunt. She is approximately 10 years old at that time, and the orphan protagonist, the main character of the novel, of the story, and when the novel begins, she is isolated, alone, powerless, but as the novel progresses, she grows in strength. Now we come to the theme of, throughout the novel we see that there are the themes of belonging, social class, there is Gothic element, there is love, and mental health as well. So we see that the main quest, the main search in personality, in character of Jane Eyre is Jane's search for a family, because Jane is deprived of parents, she does not have parents, so that's why we see that there is a sense of belonging and love which is missing and which Jane is questing and searching throughout the story and novel. So we see that this search is constantly tempered by Jane's need for independence as well. She begins the novel as an unloved orphan who is almost obsessed with finding love as a way to establish her own identity. We see that this is the basic and most important theme of the novel, because we see that Jane Eyre is an unloved orphan, and she is so much obsessed to find love because she sees that this is the only way possible in order to develop her own identity and to achieve happiness. Although she does not receive any parental love from Mrs. Reed as well, Mrs. Reed has been quite rude and harsh to Jane as well. Charlotte Bronte uses the novel to express her critique of Victorian class difference, because we see that the novel traces back its roots to Victorian era, where we see that there were a lot of circumstances and the situation in Victorian class was that women were being oppressed, women were tormented into back those times. So Jane is continuously a poor individual within a wealthy environment, particularly with weeds and a thorn field. Her poverty creates numerous hardships and obstacles and hurdles for her throughout her life, and her pursuit of happiness, including personal insecurity and the denial of opportunity. The beautiful Miss Ingram's higher social standing, for instance, makes her Jane's main competitor for Mr. Rochester's love. Even though Jane is far superior in terms of intellect and character, we see that these were the characteristics, qualities of Jane, that she was quite intellect, she had a very good character. Moreover, Jane's she refuses to marry Mr. Rochester because she sees that there are so many status differences, and which demonstrates her morality, her character, and her belief in the importance of personal independence, especially when she is being compared to Miss Ingram's gold-digging inclinations. Charlotte Bronte also evokes a sense of the supernatural, Gothic elements, and she tries to incorporate certain terrifying ghost elements of Mr. Reed in the Red Room, when as a punishment Jane was being locked up in the Red Room by her aunt, Mrs. Reed, and it creates a sort of a telepathic connection between Jane and Mr. Rochester as well, because Jane feels that she has seen the ghost of Mr. Rochester in the Red Room, and it creates a Gothic element throughout the novel. So these are few of lines from novel Jane Eyre. And if I had loved him less, I should have thought his accent and look of exaltation savage. But I thought only of the bliss given me to drink in so abundant a flow. Again and again he said, "Are you happy, Jane?" These lines have been recited by what Jane imagines in her mind as the ghost of Mr. Reed in the Red Room while Jane was being locked up over there. So these were the lines which Mr. Reed had uttered to Jane, and he asks Jane that, "Are you happy, Jane?" And again I answered yes. After which he murmured, "It will atone, it will atone. Have I not found her friendless and cold and comfortless? Will I not guard and cherish and solace her? It will expiate at God's tribunal. I know my Maker sanctions what I do. For the world's judgment I wash my hands there for man's opinion, and I defy it." So Jane recalls her immediate blissful reaction to Mr. Rochester's declaration of love and proposal of marriage in chapter 23. Mr. Rochester's exclamations reveal his devotion to and passion for Jane, as Mr. Rochester quite liked and admired Jane. Together, Jane and Mr. Rochester represent the theme of genuine love. Despite significant differences, although we know that Jane belongs to a very poor class and Mr. Rochester belonged to a very high class, so there was the theme of a genuine love as well between both of them, but there were quite significant and minute differences between them due to that social judgment they will face. So throughout the novel we see that there are the symbols of the Red Room. The Red Room represents a kind of a Gothic element, a supernatural element due to which Jane had to suffer when Mrs. Reed locked her up in the Red Room as a punishment. And there is this gross porridge, there is Chestnut Tree, the fire and ice. These are the themes of ice, food, portraits and pictures and many other things. There is the theme and symbolism of the bedroom, where Jane was locked. Once the bedroom of Jane's Uncle Reed, the chamber in which he died. This was the room where her uncle died. She was locked in the Red Room, believing that her uncle's ghost is manifesting. So Jane, for a moment, experiences extreme trauma leading to hysteria. Jane's aunt, an older woman who is supposed to treat her like a foster mother, locks Jane into the Red Room that's entirely decorated in red with a little bit white on it. Jane panics. Jane becomes terrified. She gets terrified when she thinks the ghost might be invading the room, and that was the moment when she fainted. There is the symbolism of gross porridge, the two important moments when really nasty porridge figures in Jane's life. First at Lowood, when she arrives with other girls and is served burnt porridge for breakfast. The second is Jane's homeless wandering when a woman and a little girl give Jane a bowl of cold, hard and congealed porridge. The symbolism of porridge represents and conveys to us that Jane was being treated in a very bad way, in a very inferior manner. Then we have the theme of Chestnut Tree. The Chestnut Tree symbolizes Jane and Rochester's love, their bonding, their love which both of them shared with each other. They proclaimed their love for each other under the shade of the Chestnut Tree, and then it was symbolically split by some sort of lightning, and nonetheless the tree, although split and burnt, remains alive, just like their love. So why their bonding, Mr. Rochester and Jane had been compared with Chestnut Tree? Because Chestnut Tree used to symbolize Jane and Rochester's love. They used to love and admit love for each other, and therefore one day, symbolically, a part of that tree was being hit by severe lightning. The tree, although got split apart and although burnt, remains alive, just like their love. Their love remained, but both of them were apart. So there is the symbolism of fire and ice, and fire is a symbol of emotion in the novel. Mr. Rochester has a fiery personality, deep personality, while St. John is associated with ice and snow, symbolizing his dispassionate character. Jane draws Arctic scenes in her portfolio that symbolize death. Why she draws those elements into that scenes in portfolio? Why? Because she has been experiencing death and the elements near to death from a very near eye. She wants the vitality that brings life, but also to keep it under control. On the other hand, Bertha Mason, who has no control over her feelings, is a pyromaniac. The inferno at Thornfield illustrates the danger of letting the passions run wild. We have the symbolism of eyes in the novel because the eyes are the windows to the soul. We also know that in Jane Eyre, Jane is especially attracted to Mr. Rochester's black and brilliant eyes, which symbolize his temper, his power. After Mr. Rochester loses his eyesight in the fire, Jane becomes his eyes. Jane loves him so much that she becomes his eyes metaphorically. Jane now holds the position of mastery. Bertha has bloodshot eyes that match her violent nature. The novel also emphasizes the mind's eye, active imagination. In Jane Eyre, we have the food symbolism. In it symbolizes generosity, nourishment, bounty, and hunger symbolizes cruelty and a lack of nourishment. Bronte uses food and hunger to reveal how people treat each other, who is charitable and who is not. We have the symbolism of men portraits and pictures in the novel. In Jane Eyre, food is symbolizing generosity, and the same thing again. Now, the main characters in Jane Eyre are Jane Eyre, Edward Rochester, Bertha Mason, St. John Rivers, and Mr. Brocklehurst. So, we tend to read the character and personality of Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre, as we all know, that she is orphan and she is the main focal person of the story. And when the novel begins, we see that she is an isolated, she is a lonely and powerless 10-year-old living with an aunt and her cousins who dislike her. So as the novel continues, we see that she gains strength. She becomes strong in her character and her mind as well. And she got distinguished at Lowood School as well because of her hard work and her strong intellectual abilities. As a governess, when she was doing a job of a governess at Thornfield, she learned of the pleasures and pains of love through her relationship with Edward Rochester. As we have already studied previously that Mr. Rochester and Jane were in a bonding of love, a love which was not to be fulfilled and not to be accepted by the society because of the class distinctions between both of them. After being deceived by him, she goes to Marsh End, where she regains her spiritual focus. She builds herself in character and morality, and then she discovers her own strength when she rejects St. John Rivers' marriage proposal. And by novel's end, she has become a very powerful and independent woman, blissfully married to the man she loves, Rochester. Edward Rochester is Jane's lover. He is a dark, passionate man. He is a traditional romantic hero as well. And Rochester has lived a troubled life. He's been married to an insane woman. First of all, previously to Bertha Mason, Rochester sought solace for several years in the arms of mistresses. Finally, he seeks to purify his life, to clean his life, and he wanted to marry Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre, as we already know, that she was quite an innocent, powerless, a girl which quite lacked the basic qualities which other girls used to be manifested with. So she is an innocent governess he has hired to teach his foster daughter, Adele Behrens, to become his wife. The wedding falls through when she learns of the existence of his wife. As penance for his transgressions, he is punished by the loss of an eye and a hand when Bertha sets fire to Thornfield as a reaction in order to seek vengeance from Mr. Rochester. So this is the moment when both of them tries to make the relationship more strong, and he finally gains happiness at the novel's end when he is reunited with Jane. So Bertha Mason was actually the former wife of Rochester. She was a crazy and maniac woman, frantic woman in the attic, a Creole woman from Spanish Town, Jamaica, and this beautiful and majestic woman disintegrates into debauchery, coarseness, and in the end madness soon after their wedding. Bertha's mother was also mad, and the novel suggests that Bertha's problems are a maternal inheritance. Following the deaths of his brother and father, Rochester returns to England with Bertha, locking her up in the third story of Thornfield. She occasionally escapes, her imprisonment, which had been inflicted upon her by her husband Rochester, so perpetrating violence whenever she gets loose. Eventually, she sets fire to Thornfield, and as a result, Bertha is another example of unsavory foreign masonry novel. Then John Shriver was Jane's cousin, a despotic, excessively zealous, enthusiastic person unhappy with his humble position as the minister at Morton. Saint John wants to become a missionary in order to meet his ambitions for power and glory. So he tries to force Jane to marry him and to move to India. Jane resists and spends the rest of his life furthering British colonialism. Then we have Mr. Brocklehurst, a very stingy, mean-hearted manager, so rude. He hypocritically feeds the girls at the school starvation-level rations while his wife and daughters live luxuriously, and the minister of Brocklehurst Church. He represents a negative brand, I feel. So, the main quest in Jane Eyre is Jane's search for family, as she lacks one, for a sense of belonging and love. And then this search is tempered by the gain and want of independence. She begins the novel as an unloved orphan but ends up the novel as quite a happy one and has finally established her identity. What is the moral lesson in Jane Eyre? The lesson at the end which we got from Jane Eyre is that be a brave person before being a good person. Jane Eyre showed up bravery. The main character of the story grew up in a loveless environment. She was not being loved, and her childhood was portrayed almost like a Cinderella story, always searching and wanting and desiring and longing for things. But the difference was that she was fearless, outspoken, and bold even in her childhood. So this was the ending, and the ending reunited Jane and Rochester, and their marriage became successful. Although it's bittersweet because Rochester has been disabled by eye and one hand, they marry on the basis of honest foundation. Rochester is disabled, but Jane becomes quite helpful, and therefore their marriage is based on mutual equality. If Jane, the poor, quiet, dependent governess, had married Rochester when he was whole powerful, it would have been an unequal relationship. So now Rochester is as dependent on Jane as she is on him, and the two have a balanced and a very happy marriage, and they appreciate each other.